All right, hello everybody on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you so much for joining this live session. We're going to talk about data monetization with the Dean of Big Data, also known as Bill Shmarzo, but I think his first name is, or he goes by the Dean of Big Data. He is the author of a newly released book, The Economics of Data, Analytics, and Digital Transformation. And we're going to bring him up on stage, ask him a bunch of questions all about data monetization and digital transformation. But before we do that, I actually want to briefly make an announcement and talk about a sale that Tact Publishing currently has going on. They basically, for the month of, I believe it's from December 15th until January 15th or 14th, all of their ebooks and videos are only $5. So just wanted to put that out there, let you know that if you're interested, you can go check that out. We're going to get Ravi Jain from PAC to hop on the session at the end, probably in about 45 minutes, and he's going to tell you more about that. But without further ado, I'd like to bring Mr. Shmarzo up on stage. Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's almost Christmas. Yay!
It's almost Christmas. What? My daughter asks me every day, when is Christmas? And I'm like, I don't know.
Can you see all the little Easter eggs hidden, Christmas Easter eggs hidden around my office here?
I see lights and a big thing in the back, but no.
Okay, well, it's somebody who's got a bigger screen can see that some of my favorite Christmas ornaments are out.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe we could zoom in at some point when we're done. I'm going to go check that out. Oh, wait, we could do this. Hold on. No, that just makes you see you close. So, oops, the other big news I wanted to tell you was we are doing a giveaway today. So if you're joining us now, ask Bill questions. Any questions you want. He thinks he's going to talk about data. We probably will mostly talk about data. But he said any question is a good question. And we're going to select 3 winners that are going to receive his latest book. He's written like 1 million books at this point. This is his latest book. It came out, what, 2 weeks ago? A little more?
Yeah, just about a week ago, actually. So it's pretty
new.
A
week ago. Okay.
Yeah.
On Amazon, it said November 30th, I think. So, okay, I guess it came out a week ago. It's brand new. I got this book a couple of days ago, and I've been reading through it. I was just telling Bill before we kick things off how I love the graphics inside the book, and he has his little tips of oh, now I can't find one. Oh, here, Dean of Big Data tips. I thought that was a great touch. So, Bill, why don't you, as people are joining, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and why are you known as the Dean of Big Data?
A little bit about myself. So I'm a one-trick pony. I only do data and analytics. I've been doing data and analytics since I was a wee child. I got hooked on data and analytics when I was young, playing a game called Stratomatic Baseball, and I was probably in middle school when I started playing that. And that is sort of a precursor to the sabermetric craze that swept baseball. But it was a card game where you had rolled dice and you had these statistics about players, and if you knew statistics and data better than your opponent, you could sometimes really have an unfair advantage, which is what I had. So most of my life has been around data and analytics. Lots of Forrest Gump moments in my life, right place, right time, not because I'm smart or good looking or from Iowa. Sometimes in life, you just get lucky. And so many moments in the late 1980s, I was fortunate to be the leader of one of the very first data warehouse BI projects when I was working with Procter & Gamble. I had one other Forrest Gump moment when I went to Yahoo at the same time. They're releasing this capability called Hadoop. And then the Dean of Big Data thing, another Forrest Gump moment. So Strata had just announced their conference for data science. This was I think it was the very first Strata conference in San Jose. And it was really nerdy, really technical. We were really talking about Hadoop and all things, sort of starting to venture into this area of data science. And the people who were organizing that came to me and had read some of my blogs and said, "Hey, Shmarzo, you mind doing us a favor? All the topics are really nerdy. Can you talk about it from a business perspective? Can you put a business frame around it?" So I said, "Sure, I'd love to do that." So I did a session called the Big Data MBA. And what it was about was trying to explain to the data scientists and the data engineers why what they were doing was so important, not just from a technology perspective, but from a business perspective. So I went through that, did that session. It was very well received. A lot of people afterwards, wanted more information. And so I went, after that presentation, I went to the Cube. Jeff Frick and John Furrier and those folks, right? And so Dave Vellante, they brought me on the stage and asked me what I talked about, and I kind of walked through the presentation in the session, and I think it was John Furrier goes, "Well, geez, you're like the dean of big data," and it just stuck. Right?
Oh, amazing!
So it was, and then I love teaching. As you know, Kate, I teach at the University of San Francisco and at the National University of Ireland in Galway. I also do lectures for a number of different universities. I just got a note this morning. There's a bunch of universities in India that want me to do a lecture. Oh, sure, right? I can do that from my back of my little studio here, right? And so it's great. I love teaching. I love lecturing because I find that they bring a lot of energy to the conversation, and I love the willingness of students to, like Tom Hanks in the movie Big. Yep. When you explain something, they'll stop and look at you and they'll go, "I don't get it." Those are learning moments for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious about that Big Data MBA session. How long was the session? Was it like a half day or half hour?
So it started off as it was just a 1 hour sort of introduction that segued into a whole number of things. Out of that, I created a class called Thinking Like a Data Scientist, which is about a full day class on how to get business people and data scientists to speak the same language. It turned into a whole course, Big Data MBA course, University of San Francisco, that a number of students have gone through, and many of those students are still very close to me. We stay in contact because they're always sharing stories. So it's kind of taken on a life of its own.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. So I know the topic of the day, or you're going to show us something.
So it really motivated this book. So when I was teaching the class, I had a hard time finding material that really bridged the gap between the data science and the business. They were like, it was like ketchup and chocolate, both really good in their own space, but you mix them together and right, it was terrible. And so I wrote this book as a book that I could use to teach. And now this book is being used by a number of different universities, both in the engineering department and the MBA department. I just found the other day that the Jack Welch Management Institute uses this book.
Wow.
And so you don't make any money selling books. And I'm not sure you spend a lot of time and lose a lot of hair. Notice the hair, right? You knew we were going to talk about hair, right?
You wanted to talk about hair. I have a question here.
My forehead is going to a 5 head and soon will be a 6 head. So, but I wrote that book because I really felt that I needed something that I could use to teach. Mm-hmm. But I also wanted something that somebody could walk away from my class and say, okay, this is how I do this. Yeah. It's not all theory. It's hands-on. It's pragmatic. My favorite time is I'll go to like a customer site and somebody will walk up to me with a book and say, "Do you mind signing this?" And the books I love to see are the ones that have Post-it notes all over it and they're dog-eared. And I go through and they got notes on the side. This book is meant to be used. It's not meant to sit on somebody's bookshelf. It's meant to be all used and bent and such.
Those are honestly the best books. The ones that have always motivated me in life are the ones that I've either marked up, or if it's an audiobook, I have notes open and I'm just typing notes away as I listen. Those are truly the best. And I see we've got quite a few folks on here already. And Scott Taylor's here.
Hey, Scott.
He's got your first question here, Bill. So as the Dean of Big Data, how many V's are there in Big Data?
That's a great question, Scott. So I have to tell you that this is live, so I'm going to say some things I probably regret later, but that's okay. The 3 V's of big data kind of got kicked off, right? The volume, variety, and velocity. And I got to tell you, when I talk to senior executives, they don't give a shit about the 3 V's of big data. No one cares about the 3. What they care about are the 4 M's of big data. Make me more money.
I was going to say, one of them has to be money. So.
Yeah, make me more money. And so what's interesting is that you a lot of the early conversations, well, even today, a lot of the conversations are around, I got data, so I must be smart. I got volume, variety, and velocity. So, and it's not, maybe the V that we care about is the V called value. And value, of course, has to be taken not from the view of the data, but from the view of the business stakeholders. So maybe the only V that matters, that ties back to the 4 M's of big data, is the V around value. And if you want to talk value, then you must have a conversation with the business. And I think that's where we fall down. This is where the data science team misses its chance to shine in glory, is that they're afraid to go in there and talk to the chief marketing officer or the head of logistics, because you have a solution to their problem.
Yeah.
But you're not willing to talk to us. This book here was all designed. The first book was designed to help the data scientists have that conversation with the business. This one is totally nerdy in the sense it takes the concepts here and it drives it down and says, wait a second. There are economic concepts here that support the conversation we're having here. The business people must listen to the data science team, because economics says that this data is a unique asset. It's something we've never seen before. Anyway, so that's the V's question.
Yeah, I mean, Scott's asking another follow-up question about how do you actually define big data. So maybe we just touch on that quickly, because you are the dean of big data, not just data. So maybe
not just data. Yeah, I'm not the dean of just boring old data. I'm the dean of big data. And it helps that I'm a big guy, right? If you met me, I'm about 6'6", 255 pounds. So I'm a big data, big guy.
You're my height. You're almost my height, I said. That's
so the question is, so how do you define big data? I find that's a conversation not really worth having. And what I mean by this, and no offense here, is that when people start talking about data in the conversation about, is my data, I get this question a lot, is my data big enough? I'm like, no, that's not the right question. The question is your problem big enough? Part of the challenge I think that we face as data science and data practitioners is to change that frame. Right? It isn't, is your data big enough? Is the problem big enough? Right? Do I have enough data? I got to tell a story. So I'm sitting in this customer meeting, and I love customer meetings because you learn a ton in customer meetings if you open your ears. And so I made this provocative comment, and I like making provocative comments in customer meetings. So I want customers to feel uneasy, because if they feel comfortable, they're not going to change. But if I can make them feel uneasy, then I got a chance, right? And so I made the comment. I said, there are some people who believe that the amount of data at the edge will soon be more than the amount of data in the cloud. Then I pause. And there were two executives in the room, and they look at each other and they go, well, how are we going to manage and protect all that data? And then the guy across the table goes, that's not the right question. The question is, how are we going to monetize all that data? I knew I had my sponsor. Yeah. I knew from that very point forward, I had my sponsor, who I could now bring the data science team with this person to figure out, how are we going to monetize the data around the problems your organization cares about?
Yeah, and that's actually one of the main topics I wanted to cover in our session today, is how does an organization actually identify and then later prioritize the various use cases or projects that can benefit from monetizing data?
It's the heart of the entire big data MBA conversation, Kate. Mm-hmm. And it stems from an interesting problem. Organizations don't fail because of lack of use cases. They fail because they have too many. And you can't get organizational alignment around where do we start? And then how do we build a roadmap to go after that? So we actually use lots of design thinking techniques, mm-hmm. design thinking black magic, to hypnotize people and get them to sort of play well together. But we find that the best way to get people to play together well is you start by understanding what is it the organization is trying to accomplish. What are their key business initiatives? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's customer retention, maybe it's opening new markets, maybe it's releasing a new product, maybe it's reducing unplanned operational downtime, whatever their issue is. We like to start there. And I like to start with what the executives say their key business initiatives are, because if the executives say that's their key business initiative, there are two things that I like. Number one, there's probably quantifiable value associated with that. 50, 100, $200 million in many cases, right? But even more importantly, there's probably some executives in the organization who are not sleeping at night because of that initiative. So we start with that. We start with that business initiative. We say, we're going to help solve that problem. The next step, which is really critical, is to identify all the people, all the stakeholders who either impact or are impacted by that business initiative. Mm-hmm. You need to identify them all. This is a stakeholder map, which is a design thinking technique, right? You're going to create a stakeholder map to understand who the players are, and you don't want to miss somebody, because more of these projects die not because of bad technology, they die because of passive aggressive behaviors, which is you've not allowed everybody in the organization to have their voice heard. So you bring all these people, you identify these people, and then you take them through a process of identifying, validating, value, and prioritizing the use cases, which, by the way, for us, we typically focus in on the decisions the business stakeholders are trying to make in support of that business initiative. And here's a bit of magic that happens here. So we focus on the decisions. We might have 12, 14 16 different stakeholders. We capture their questions. We bring them all together. They're amazed how many of the different stakeholders are all asking the same questions. And there's this epiphany moment. It happens every workshop where the people are like, Joe, I didn't know you were asking that same question. Joe and I didn't know, I didn't know. They didn't know. They don't talk to each other. Holy cow, right? Don't you got a cafeteria? Hello, folks, right? Right. So that is the point of epiphany when they all realize that we're all trying to solve the same problems. Now, they all have different perspectives, which is gold, right? They all, the different perspectives is the beauty, but they realize they're all trying to solve the same problems. So now you have a process where you go through using a flip chart like one of these back here, and you go through and take these use cases and you have this session where you're trying to place these use cases based on a business value versus implementation feasibility perspective. It's 45 minutes to an hour of yelling, cajoling, negotiating, kicking, screaming, crying, trying to figure out what that order is. But you come up with a plan that says, okay, we're going to start with this use case first. By the way, the learnings from that use case will allow us to accelerate the development of this use case second. We're going to do this third. You now have a plan for around use cases where every use case has a compelling ROI, and each use case builds on what happened before that. It's so simple.
Quick question for you. So let's say I've got two use cases. One, it would be very easy to implement, but the ROI is not that. It's not going to change the world. And then there's one that's going to change everyone's life in the organization, but it's going to be a big push. You need everyone involved. What do you think people should start with? Kind of the low-hanging fruit or the project that brings the highest ROI?
So this is where the organization culture decides that. Yeah. And what I find my job to do is I lead a lot of these workshops myself. Mm-hmm. And I find that my job is to help steer them towards smaller steps. So we purposely say on an implementation feasibility perspective, 12 months. What can you do in 12 months? Now, when you say 12 months, it wipes out a lot of those cure world hunger kind of things. Yeah. Because you've got to do things in 12 months. Because, by the way, if you don't do it in 12 months, that CIO is probably gone anyway, right? So there's a sense of urgency. You need to create a sense of urgency. You got to be kind of a bit of a a-hole, but you got to create a sense of urgency that says you're sitting on a gold mine. Why are you going to take 5 years to monetize that? Yeah. And by the way, you don't need to spend $20 million and spend 5 years and cost thousands of lives and hope at the end something of value squirts out. No, you can do things in 6 and 7 month chunks and building each other. So I definitely try to steer companies towards a smaller, but that feasibility panel or line, horizon line, we always say 12 months. Anything more than 12 months and you're out of business. So 12 months.
That makes sense. And we've got a clarifying question here from Solomon. So what is data monetization? Are we selling data? What are we doing? Since that's the title of our topic here. Yeah,
we should probably talk about. So there are a few organizations that actually can excel at selling data. They're few and far between, and that's their business. Most organizations, though, aren't in the business of selling data. They're in the business of making product or flying airplanes or running theme parks or saving people in hospitals, right? Most people, their job is not selling data. Right. So when I talk about data monetization, what I want to differentiate, and sorry if I go nerdy here, is I want to differentiate the difference between value in exchange versus value in use. Value in exchange is an accounting technique. It's an accounting valuation technique that says the value of your asset is what someone's willing to pay you for it. And so as we get into these conversation about, well, I want to put data on my balance sheet, so what's it worth? Well, to fit into an accounting balance sheet, it has to have some sort of, somebody's willing to pay you for that, so it pops up into your balance sheet. That's great. Now, I got to tell you, I had that mentality for a long time. I was trying to figure out, when I did this data monetization mission I've been on for the last couple of decades, I kept thinking about it from a balance sheet perspective. wrong. I was wrong. It took a student in my class to open my eyes to the fact that, Professor Shmarzo, we shouldn't be talking about a value in exchange approach, valuation approach. We should be talking about a value in use valuation approach, which is, how do I use that data to make money? Why is my $30,000 car out there more valuable to an Uber driver than it is to me? Yeah. Right? Because the Uber driver is going to drive it and make money. So when we switch the monetization conversation away from an accounting mindset about a value in exchange, and we transform it to an economic conversation, now we have a framework around which we can think about, wow, what's the value of data? Well, I can use that data to improve customer retention. I can improve promotional effectiveness. I can improve new product introductions. I can improve, right? I can use that same data set across all these different use cases, right? And each use case has, value. Man, one might be worth 5 million. I might be worth 10 million, right? And the same data set empowering all these use cases. But here's the real secret. Here's the key. Here's the aha moment. I can use that same data set over and over and over again.
Wait, it doesn't depreciate?
What? It doesn't depreciate. It never wears out. I can use it an infinite number of times at a marginal cost equal to 0.
So it's not like ice cream.
Unfortunately, no. I love ice cream. So that's Kate. That's the aha moment when organizations have that epiphany. It goes, oh my gosh, this data as an economic asset is unlike anything else we've seen before. But I've got to change my mindset about how I view it. It isn't enough to have data. I hate the folks who said, well, we're going to become a data-driven organization. No, bullshit. Focus on value generation. Having used data to generate value, having data it's got latent value at best. Turn it into kinetic energy, right? Put it in motion. Get shit done.
So speaking of value, right? We typically hear companies trying to become data-driven. And in your book, you mentioned that we basically need to
by the way, Scott says data is the new ice cream. That's what I can get onto. I like that one.
Data, it's the new oil, it's the new bacon, right? It's now the new. So you're in your book, you mentioned that we should stop calling it to be, being data-driven and go more towards a value-driven approach. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I know you started on that topic, but wanted to hear basically, when did that switch happen to you from when, telling people to be data-driven to now being value-driven?
Well, I have to admit, I was in the 1980s when I was working with Procter & Gamble. I was trained to not think about data, but think about value. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's always been a value conversation. And what I find is that when I talk to organizations, especially IT organizations who want to become data-driven, I can almost immediately tell that they're not having a good conversation with the side of the business, because the business doesn't want to be data-driven. They want to be value-driven. So this is part of that shift you have to make, mostly on the IT side. You're not going to teach your business users to code neural networks. That's not what they do, right? They're experts at media planning and buying and prescribing medicines and marketing products and selling stuff, right? So it's on IT. It is on IT to change their frame and stop talking about, we got data, so we must be smart. Start talking about, how do we take that data and have a conversation with the business side over here around, how do I create value for them? Mm-hmm. And so it does fall on the CIO in particular, and the chief data officer, which is a title I hate. We can talk about that later. But it also needs a mandate from the business executives who are saying, we're making decisions today. We're making overly generalized decisions that have, at best, average impact. We need to change how we make decisions. We need to optimize how we allocate and use our assets more effectively, right? The business is screaming. It's screaming for what's buried in the data. Yeah. And the IT organization thinks it's about data, and it's not. It's about value.
It's all about value. I love it.
All that matters, right? That's why it's about economics. What's economics? Economics is a study in the creation of wealth and value, right? It's about economics.
Yes, and so we're going to hop into some of the audience questions. We're getting plenty of great questions. So let's start with Juan Pablo Almos Barzon. All right, there we go. Which stakeholder gets to say how much the data is worth? The business or the data scientist? If both, how should this interaction play out?
Good question. So the business has the entire say in it. It's the business that says how valuable it is. It's the business who basically has to drive that prioritization process around use cases based on business value. So it's on the business. Now, it's on the data science team. Once the business says this is worth this to us, it's on the business and the data science team to collaborate around the decisions in order to build the models to help to optimize the decisions that support that business value. But the value has to be determined by the business. Otherwise you're pushing a rope. And you need to have the business people own that rope and be pulling that value into their operations.
I love how animated you are. You're probably the most animated guest I've had. This is amazing.
You know, when I do presentations, you got to watch out because sometimes my mouse, like, you know, for the advancer, gets thrown into the crowd by accident. It's like, oh shit, where'd that go? If you have it, can you advance a slide, please?
That's why your mic is mounted to the desk, right?
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, it'd be all over the place.
And I love this comment here. Somebody on YouTube said that he prefers this channel's videos over Netflix anytime. So
I like that, though. I'm not sure I can compete with the Queen's Gambit. Though the Queen's Gambit was a motivation for me in the fact that what I loved about Queen's Gambit, every episode was better than the previous one. I wanted every chapter in my book to be better than the previous one. I'm not sure I achieved it. Only the audience will tell me, but I love the Queen's Gambit.
I started watching the Queen's Gambit on Netflix, but then when basically 10 minutes into it, I turned it off. I'm more of a show. I don't know. Everyone's like, no, give it a chance. You think it's worth it?
I rewatched episode 7 yesterday, and I cried at the end again.
Oh my goodness. Okay, maybe I'll fine. You've convinced me. I'll get back into it.
Of course, I cried at Phantom of the Opera, so I'm a crier. So.
I cry over ads and commercials. So yeah, I get it. Okay, so Mega is saying, hello, Kate and Bill. My question to Bill, if an organization decides to concentrate on the top 3 business priorities driven by analytics, what top 3 big data challenges should they keep in mind to be set up for success?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, first off, we know that the data is always stinky. So there's
one, unstink your data. Okay.
Yeah, unstink your data. Data is hard. It's never at the right level of granularity. It's never easy to access. It's never as clean as it needs to be. So the amount of data engineering work that's required, the data engineer is the unsung hero in this world. Yeah. There's a lot. The world of data munging and data wrangling and getting data into some usable format is really, really hard. And it's, by the way, it's been a real nag for data warehouses for a long time. And so the data is going to be dirty. There's no magic here. It's only hard work. The good news is you can go through an envisioning process to identify what data do I think is most relevant for the problem I'm trying to solve. So you're not trying to clean all the data. That's a formula for disaster. This is what killed data warehouses. We're going to clean up all of our data. Well, not all your data is valuable. Not all your data is important. So you want to go through a process to say, what are the most important data sources that I'm going to need to go after this problem? So you're going to do lots of sandboxes. Data science team is going to try small samples. And then you're going to settle in on the 3 or 4 or 5 data sources that are most important to that problem. And then you're going to focus all your data cleansing efforts on that. So number 1, clean the data. But not all data is of equal value. So number 2 would be to have a prioritization process so you know what data you really need to work on and you can ignore the rest. Third problem. I think the third problem manifests itself in the horror called a data lake. Now, organizations build data lakes as if they're somehow magically better than data warehouses. The problem with a data lake is you just can't throw raw data into a data lake and hope that people are going to get value from it. And I've been involved in way too many data lake second surgeries where somebody went out and they bought the technology, built a data lake, they threw a whole shitload of data into it, hired some data scientists, opened the doors, and they waited. Right? Crickets, right? Nothing happened. So the third problem I think organizations have is how you structure your data lake with curated data so that you are truly treating data as an asset. all the data enhancement, feature engineering you're doing around it, all the enrichment techniques and such, right? The normalization, right? The data lake becomes, I stole this term from the IMF, a project I did with the IMF, right? They call their data lake a collaborative value creation platform. Collaborative value creation platform. What they've done is they've put their data in there, not all of it, but the data that's most important, the data that's being shared, and they put all this cleansing effort. So now they have this platform where people can very easily find data. They can easily use it. They can share their learnings from it. And every time somebody's using the data, they find problems and they fix problems and it gets better. So the three things, right? Data is a mess. Number two, prioritize. You're not trying to boil the ocean. And number three, make sure your data lake isn't a fantasy land, right? Right? It's a reality land that's built out use case by use case, curated data so I can reuse that data over and over again.
Absolutely. I love that answer. Thank you. And as we were talking, so you said find the important data and ignore the rest. So I wanted you to just elaborate on the ignore the rest piece of things. Do we delete it? Do we store it? Maybe it'll be valuable later because, it doesn't depreciate. What are your thoughts on that?
That, Kate, is a great question because you might find, organization by organization, this differs, but you might find you've got data sets that you shouldn't be storing, that there are liability reasons and compliance reasons why you store that data, and you hope you're going to use it, but you have to weigh hope against the reality of fines. And we know that a lot of the privacy fines, the GDPR, the California Privacy Act, these things, some of these fines are going to get more and more onerous, especially now we have a change in administration that's going to be a lot less tolerant of some of the privacy stuff. So as organizations go through this, you may decide that we have data sets that we're going to put on tape and lock behind a vault somewhere just in case you ever need it, but we're not going to make it publicly available. And heck, some organizations may decide we're not even going to keep that data. We're going to eliminate that risk because, by the way, the value from that data is not greater than the risk of exposure from that data.
Right. And also the cost of storage, right? In some cases, if it's really, really big data, cost could be impacting. There was a comment here. It doesn't show the name, LinkedIn user, but I thought it was funny because you mentioned data engineers, and the comment is that they should be on an episode of Dirty Jobs because of how bad it gets at times.
That would be an episode I'd watch. That's a great idea. I love that. You should have saved your name because you missed the chance for glory. It's a great comment.
Yes, show yourself. Tell us your name. Get the credit. And Gary says it's a lake, not a cesspool. So
yeah, that's right. You got to architect. You got to engineer it.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Question here from Raul, still on the data lake topic. What's the difference between a data lake and a data warehouse?
Boy, that sounds like a conversation that'll get me in trouble with all my data warehouse friends. To me,
you have permission to say skip.
No. I think it's a good question. No, let's go back to that.
Yes, good. Raul.
The data warehouse has become this repository for highly aggregated, structured data, right? Rows and columns. We store 24 months of aggregated data at the product level, but we don't have the detailed transactions. And to me, a data lake gets down to the very lowest level of granularity. Let me give you an example. A point of sale system would keep, what products were sold and the price, average price, and a lot of stuff gets averaged out and you put in a data lake, a data warehouse, right? Because it's just how it's set up. However, if I was just to save the entire receipt in the data lake, all that unstructured data tells me, who the cashier was, how long each of the different scans took, which scans got rejected because the barcodes were wrapped around something crazy, right? When I have that granular data, I can now start finding those outliers that I can start to monetize. What's interesting to me about, maybe this is a difference here, the data warehouse is great at providing trends and comparisons and helping you understand where you're having problems and where you have opportunities. They do a great job of that. The data lake gives you that detailed information to go out and solve it, right? I can get into the low level of granularity. And by the way, it isn't the volume of data that drives the monetization efforts. It's the granularity. It's those individual little transactions, those outliers that a data warehouse will obscure out, right? The data warehouse aggregates data. It's like going wine tasting and slapping Vaseline on your tongue, right? No, I want those little nuances. Why would you do that? I drink beer. So So I think the difference is the fact that the data lake can allow me to have the lowest level of granular data possible. And then I can aggregate it to whatever level I need based on the problem I'm trying to solve.
Okay.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. I think that answers his question. Ravit is clarifying that comment was Eric Bird's comment.
Of course it was Eric Bird's. I know Eric quite well. One of my first students. Thank you, Eric.
Awesome. So, okay, I had a question as I was reading through your book. There was a section on AI, and I wanted to ask, how does AI start to play a role or continue playing a role in monetizing big data, small data, any data?
What I find very compelling about AI is that when properly constructed, and that's a big gotcha, by the way, that I can build an environment that is continuously learning and adapting. It becomes the perfect companion for frontline humans. Yeah. I don't believe that AI is something that the executive row is going to have a bunch of AI tools on their desks. I think where you see AI being monetized is in the customer interactions. It's in the operations of the building or the theme park or the airplanes. It happens at the very front lines. And for AI, I believe for AI to really exploit the value of AI, you've got to empower AI. You got to couple AI with empowered employees. You got to have employees working with AI who are taking the AI recommendations and learning from them, but maybe even overriding them. Maybe saying, that's not the right recommendation to spot. I'm going to do this instead, but I want to feed this back into the system. Mm-hmm. Because the AI model only learns from the data that it has. Humans have the ability to say, well, maybe we should try this instead. I love the power of might. Right? Maybe when I try, as an organization, if you don't have enough might moments, you'll never have any breakthrough moments. So the idea of empowering your front lines to take what the AI model says and says, we're going to try this instead, but we're going to measure if that's more effective or not. We got to create this feedback loop, because that's when AI is powerful, because it feeds on itself and it's learning and it's sharing that learning. So to me, I think what AI starts to realize is monetization is not in the mahogany row of the puzzle palace. It's down in the front lines where people are either talking to customers or they're trying to run the operations of the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I just wanted to quickly flip back to a comment. You said you hated the title of a chief data officer. So Scott also wanted to know, I also wrote this down. What's up with the CDO? How is it bothering you?
All right. So I've talked to a fair number of CDOs, and whenever most CDOs look like CIO mini-me's. They look like the CIO basically said, "Oh, this data shit, it's really hard. I'm going to hire somebody to manage all this, and you're going to become a CDO." And so the tasks haven't changed, just the responsibility for who does it. And so what I am trying to evangelize, and I think it's a role that I personally would love to have, is this idea of chief data monetization officer, right? That the chief data monetization officer should be responsible for monetizing the data. Mm-hmm. And there's a 4-step process. I got it laid out here in my chart here. I had a class on this recently, and it's about, you think about a chief data officer's role.
Yeah.
Number one, you have to be able to identify the sources and impediments to value creation. That's number one, right? Where and how can I use data to drive value or to remove impediments to value? That's job number one, by the way. That's an economics and design thinking conversation. Nothing to do with technology. Number two, I have to be able to codify those sources of value creation. That's data science, that's data engineer, that's ML, that's AI, right?
Yep.
Number three, I got to operationalize it. I got to be able to feed the analytic insights into my operational systems so that they're actually being deployed. And number four, I have to build an environment where the entire culture, both the AI models and the humans, are continuously learning and adapting. So to me, the chief data monetization officer is this great role. You're responsible for this unique asset called data and analytics. Your job is to monetize it and to permeate it across the organization. Sorry there.
I see. I knew it.
Bang that thing. Yeah. So I got a little cover on it so I don't spit on it, right? So, but to me, as a chief data monetization officer, their charter totals differently. It's not about managing data. It's about getting value from it. It's about monetizing that data. So that's why I hate the title chief data officer, because most people, they don't think about monetizing data. They're too focused on just managing it.
Managing it, storing it, cleaning it. Yeah. Interesting. Jose has another suggestion for you here. So the job of a financial officer is to make basically more money for stakeholders. Looks like there should be a financial data officer to do the same through data.
That's actually that's a great recommendation. I agree.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so you wrote this book. Just want to flip back to the book for a second. And I was curious, what was your favorite part about writing the book?
Favorite part. Well, there is no favorite part of writing a book. A book is like a death march. You decide to write the book. And I got to tell you, I did a class, a lecture for Doug Laney's class at the University of Illinois. And after doing the class, Doug said, Shmarzo, you got to write a book on this. And I literally became the motivation for this book. So I marched down this death trap. You know, you take on, and it's what happens is, as at least for me, I try to tell a story. I want to make sure all the chapters make sense. They all build on each other, and I want to cap it with something I thought would be interesting. Yeah. And I think my favorite chapter in the book is the last chapter. It's chapter 9. It's totally like anything it's like anything I hadn't written before. Yeah, that I'd done several lectures on. It's about team empowerment. And as I got more and more into this, and as I did more and more lectures on COVID-19, thank you, on COVID-19 and how to not just survive but thrive in a world after COVID-19. I was lecturing. I did a lot of presentations at Santa Clara and at St. Mary's and all these colleges, these graduate students, and I kept realizing it's not just about data and analytics. It's also about team empowerment. And so to me, chapter 9 for me was the chapter that I'm most excited about, probably most proud about, because it pushed me out of what I thought my comfort zone and took me into an area that I think is critically important, which is this idea of how do you empower teams. Now, I got to admit to you, I've been very fortunate in my career the last several years. I've had a very empowered team. I've learned a lot about empowerment from my team by the fact that one of the things I believe in as a leader is that if one of my people I manage comes to me and says, hey, Bill, we need to make a decision on X, Y, and Z, I always come back and say, well, you're closer to the problem. Mm-hmm. What decision would you make? And then make the decision, right? Yeah. I want you to make the decision. I want you to learn from it. I want you to understand before you make the decision, what do you think the assumptions are? What's your hypothesis behind that? We have a whole hypothesis development canvas we create to help drive that kind of a thing. I want you to document it. And then after you make the decision, did it work? Was it successful? And what did you learn from that decision? You can reapply to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Empowerment's everything.
Yeah, it's the way to grow. It's the way of the future. And so Ravid says it's hard for an author to choose a favorite part. I get that. And Doug Laney is the best. Actually, Doug is speaking at my next DATAcated conference in February on the fact that data is not the new oil. And that should be an interesting conversation. Another question on the book. So you end each chapter with homework.
Yeah, baby. Do your homework.
Let me show you the homework.
Can I see the note? Can you share your homework so I can grade it?
No, I didn't do the homework though. So it's an assessment. It's you get a score. Tell me more about this. How did you get the idea? Do all your books have homework? This is the only book I have of yours so far. What is this?
Can you see that?
Nope. Too much light going on.
It says F for not doing your homework.
F for fantastic, or
for not doing your homework, you get an F. Anyway, so did all my books have homework in them?
Yes.
The last few have. The third book, which is called The Art of Thinking Like a Data Scientist, is chock full of homework and extra. It's really, that book was written as a workbook that students could use in class. It's available on my website. I charge like $9 for it because I wanted people to be able to get access to this book. It's available as a PDF. It was, and that book is nothing but homework assignments. There's a couple of really good chapters in there about hypothesis development canvas. I think is gold. And I think to me, that's one of the aha discoveries of this process, the journey I've been on, is the importance of this hypothesis development canvas. So this book, again, I wrote this with students in mind. Now, not just college students, but people who are on businesses, who run businesses, are trying to figure out what are the kinds of questions I need to be asked. And how do I compare myself? Like each one of these chapters they're not yes and no answers, right? They're all based on a gradient. Where do you sit? What does good look like, right? And I wanted people to understand, here's what good looks like. Where do you sit, and how do you get from where you are? How do you Uber from where you are to where you want to be?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very helpful. Any book that encourages me to answer questions and reflect, I think is great. And especially when you leave enough space for me to actually write in there. Okay, back to the questions here. What steps, actions would you recommend for the CEO so that the CEO has an aha moment with respect to data monetization? Do you have like a go-to story you tell? Or
I've been fortunate to have worked with a few CEOs who get this. Now, they tend to be in small and medium-sized businesses because that's where a CEO can actually make things happen. I think the aha moment for a CEO, you need to take them through an education process. And that's why a lot of this book is really around educating around the economics of data and analytics. You first thing you got to do as a CEO is you got to change their mindset. That, data is not a cost to minimize. Data is this unique asset. There's a few companies out there that have mastered the code. Why can't you? But the real aha moment comes when they start saying, I have these problems and they all have huge value. Yeah. And data and analytics can help me solve that, right? We're like, yeah. And you don't need to spend $20 million to solve the first problem, right? Right. The big bang approach of what we did around ERP systems scared away a lot of business people, right? They spent 10, 30, 40 million dollars and 2 times that in consulting services. And it took forever for the project to work out. And at the end, the business users didn't get what they wanted, right? They did not get what they wanted. And so you need to take the CEO and say, this is not a big bang approach. We're going to take it use case by use case, because in knowledge-based industries, the economies of learning are more powerful than economies of scale. And so you want to build this. The companies that are going to survive digital transformations are the ones that can learn and reapply faster than their competition. The CEO sees that, then you've got them. And when you have a CEO sponsoring you, because the biggest challenge changes that. Yeah. The biggest challenge changes from the fact that you want to, I believe in this use case by use case approach, and the CEO says, let's just do it all at once. Let's just do it all. I'm all in. Let's just solve this thing all at once. It's like, no, I can't take 20, 30 different use cases, do them simultaneously and figure out how to learn across them, right? You're going to end up with different architecture. You're going to end up with orphaned analytics. You're going to end up with data silos. You have to build your data and analytics capabilities use case by use case. Now, maybe you're one of the 5 or 10 companies in the world who actually have that, crack the code on that, but most companies haven't. So yeah. So the CEO conversation has to switch to being, you have to be patient. You have to build this out one at a time. You have to build organizational alignment and buy-in. You've got to stomp out passive aggressive behaviors by showing everybody in the organization how they're going to benefit from this. Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to get everyone, all the key stakeholders on your side as you go on this journey. We'll take a couple more questions, and then we're going to get Ravi to join us for a minute or two, and then we're going to wrap up. But this has been fun, Kate. This has been great. Having fun? That's good. That's the whole point, just to have fun here. So question here from Gordon. All management methods come from managing scarce resources. People, money, widgets. Do we need new methods to manage data since it's not scarce? That's a great comment, Gordon. Hi, Gordon. Gordon and I have done a couple of webinars together. Another brilliant person in this industry. We certainly do need new methods. And I believe the book lays out a method for how you do that. But I think, Gordon, we're going to need a new mindset, right? A mindset around how we drive, because the data is so plentiful that you can get very seduced into everybody having their own version of the data. This is what killed data warehousing, right? To a certain extent, data marts killed data warehousing. Sorry, Ralph. You can kick me in the shin later about that. But we allowed data proliferation to happen. And I can tell you more than once, I sat at a meeting and I watched the VP of sales, the VP of finance, and the VP of marketing argue about whose numbers were right? Because they all had their own little data marts with all the same sales data, but everybody had tweaked it slightly different. So everybody had the word sales, but was that dead net? Was that gross? What you mean by sales, right? Oh, yeah, that's true. Right. And I love the one about, this is what GE bought last year. Well, what do you mean by GE? Is that all their divisions, that their subsidiaries? I mean, I mean, how do you define these things? And so what happens is that when data is so plentiful, you risk this idea that it just permeates, it breaks out of the banks of the lake and starts popping up. And we know that there are two things that kill the economic value of data. Number one, data silos. When data is allowed to proliferate uncontrolled, you're going to end up with data that's inconsistent. And the minute you start having inconsistencies and you start making bad decisions with the data, you've lost the confidence of the business and you're back. You go back to square zero immediately. So you can't do that. So I think that's the challenge, is to keep us under. This is the chief data monetization officer you need to have a very strong governance operation that's governing how and where people are using that data, so it stays within the bounds of this idea of reusability and learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. We've got a question here from Mangli and then a couple of others that have mentioned that they wanted an answer to the question here. So what do you think of the role analytics translator? I really like this new description for a more hybrid role between data science, business monetization, and specific domain knowledge, business intelligence.
I think this is a good question. I think it's so my perspective is that I think everybody needs to learn how to think like a data scientist. That I think everybody needs to become an analytics translator. I don't think it's a specialized role. I think it's something that becomes part of your discipline. No matter what profession you're in, whether you're a teacher, a lawyer, a nurse, a barista at Starbucks, right? I think everybody's going to need to have analytics in their back pocket. To me, there are two fundamental skill sets that the next generation is going to have to master. Number one, you need to become a citizen of data science, not a citizen data scientist. I don't want you to build my neural networks, but I want you to understand where and how to use data science to drive value. And the second one that I talk more about in my third book, The Art of Thinking Like a Data Scientist, is this whole idea around design thinking. I'm a huge fan of design thinking. I got to tell you, I mean, like 4 years ago, I didn't even know what this thing was. And then I had my friend John Morley introduced me to some people at Google, some of their data science team, who've all embraced design thinking. I was like, what, design thinking? Was that like a neural network? What is that thing? And so I've learned that design thinking is about it's about empowerment. It's about embracing the power of mind. It's about all ideas are worthy of consideration, which doesn't mean all ideas are worth a shit, right? But it's about how do you create a culture where everybody's ideating and sharing best things. So I don't think an analytics translator is the right answer, is because I think everybody should become an analytics translator. It's kind of like how, back in the old days, you used to have operators and you'd call and say, can you connect, I'm showing my age, right? Can you connect me with so-and-so? Now we've alternate operators, right? We dial our own phones. We don't go through an operator dial our phone for us. So anyway, I'll shut up.
No, you're good. You're good. People are clearly enjoying it. Look at this comment from Raul. This is better than Dreamforce. Learning a lot more. And Sebastian here agrees with you. Great webinar. Everyone should be an analytics translator from operational to strategic roles.
Amen.
We've got Mark Garrett here from Perdago. He says governance is the gold standard. So I know you mentioned governance quite a few times, and without governance, we have this dirty data lake, cesspool, waterfall, volcano thing happening. What would be your maybe 3 things you can tell people in terms of getting data governance right? What do we do?
To me, the first thing about governance is I want to make certain, if I believe that the economies of learning are more powerful than the economies of scale, then I want to create an environment where I'm learning more and more by reusing my assets. I want to encourage the reuse of my data sets and the reuse of my analytic modules, right? And this is, so the governance process should own stamping out data silos and stamping out orphaned analytics, right? We got to drive reuse. Governance, by the way, and this is a problem I've seen many times, most governance organizations don't have teeth. They can cajole, they can beg, they can buy people coffee and try to do things. No, I think you need to give the governance person, the head of the governance organization, which I'd argue would be the chief data monetization officer, you got to give them both a stick and a carrot, right? The carrot is, by reusing this data and analytics, we're going to accelerate your time to value and de-risk projects. There's a stick though too, right? If you start bringing in your own data sources and don't start sharing it, there has to be consequences, because that's when you start having the data if you don't share the data, you don't get value from it. So to me, that governance process is all about making sure that you are getting organization to reuse the data and analytic assets. The data governance organization has both a carrot and a stick, and it must be able to invest in the assets. So it must be able to direct investments and say, okay, what data sets really going to try to improve? Right? We know that these data sets are the most important. Let's focus our investments on the cleansing, the alignment, the transformation, the enrichment of those data sets. So the head of the data governance council has to have not only teeth and stick and carrot, they got to have budget. They're the ones telling the organization, these are the most important data sets, we're going to invest here.
Yeah, absolutely. And a few points that are coming in here. One from Gordon saying raising data literacy is an emerging challenge. The more literate, the more people understand the value of governance. And
Amen.
Susan also says we need to make data less intimidating for the non-technical users who are just as important for data quality.
Totally
I completely agree.
Yep.
At all levels, right? Data literacy. It's all about how we get there, but I think it's a journey that everyone has to take from start where you are and continue to become more.
Kate, what's interesting is I actually believe that most people are born with innate analytic and data science skills.
Yeah.
The ability to explore and try and test and learn from that is a very, very human nature. Our education system, through standardization of testing, drives that out of our students. And we almost have to go back to these students who have been cheated and reinvigorate their curiosity, their ability to be creative, the ability to innovate. So we are just trying to do what the human body does naturally, that we've somehow over the years have wiped out, but it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Kirk Bourne who shared this the first time I heard it, was the use of Legos and children and how they take Legos and or blocks with different colors, how they organize them by shape and size and color. And that's, data parsing, I guess, right? Then they visualize it by building data visualization and presenting it, data storytelling, showing it to your parents. So I think so far, we still have so many questions coming in. I don't think we're going to have time to take more questions. Ravit is joining us as we speak to announce the 3 lucky winners for the book giveaway.
Oh, I hope I win one. Oh, wait, I guess I can't.
No. I hope I win one. No, wait, I already have one. So, okay, and I see Ravit is actually already here. Maybe pop him right on screen.
Hello.
Ravit.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Ravit.
How's it going?
Amazing. All good. Amazing to hear you, Bill. You can talk endlessly on data, and I guess I'm meeting Bill for the second time, seeing him in person, but definitely what a great session, Bill. Thank you for this. And when are you actually coming on the Ravit show as well? I wanted to ask this. Wow.
You got to invite me. I love talking. So it's one of the things I've been doing a lot of recently is talking. So yes.
So
definitely you and John Thompson, definitely.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
So I pulled up your page to make it easier. So I know you're going to make an announcement, and then we'll get the 3 winners announced.
Yes. So also talking about the campaign where Pact is coming up with a $5 campaign. And it's that time of the year where we celebrate Christmas and New Year's, and it has been kind of tough for everyone this year. So Pact has come up with this initiative where they have put up all the books on $5 and the videos as well. So and this is for 30 days starting from today. So awesome. Anyone who wishes to go and wants to read, Christmas is all set, New Year's is all set.
Just $5. I love it. If people have the desire to learn, I think this is a great opportunity to just get the stuff and get to learning. So
exactly.
Ravit, nice shirt. I see you're representing your. I guess the next time we see Bill is going to be on your show, huh?
Yeah, definitely. I think John Thompson as well, because I want to actually get them both together and see how it works. Kate, you're invited as well.
Yeah, we can tell stories from the 1980s, so be careful.
It's okay. I'm happy to learn more about the past, I guess.
Quick question for you, Ravi, before you announce the winners from Raymond. Is there a deal on paper books or just the digital?
Paperback, yes. So for the $5 campaign, it's for the digital e-copies and videos as well.
Okay, yes. Awesome. All right. Well, Ravid, who are the 3 lucky winners that are receiving a copy of Bill's book?
Yes, very excited to say this. So everyone, great questions, amazing session. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Bill. Congratulations to the winner. The first winner is Scott Taylor. Obviously, Scott has that, a bank of questions when it comes to data. So congratulations, Scott Taylor. The other one is Mangley. Congratulations, Mangley, and Jose Alberto. So these guys can reach out to me, and I can actually post a book of Bill's book to them. Yes.
Awesome.
But very enthusiastic session, superb, loved
I
it.
know, I'm telling you,
Bill.
my most animated guest ever, and I've been doing the shows I've had so far. You've out-energized Scott Taylor, and Scott Taylor brings a lot. So.
Exactly, that's what I was wondering, because more than obviously Bill does the talking, but when he does it with the animations, you can actually feel it, and you can actually be there presently where he's actually talking about it. So thanks, Bill.
Well, fortunately, none of the salespeople from my previous couple of companies are online, because I also like.
Did it just freeze?
Yeah, I guess Bill is stuck.
Bill, you have frozen. Oh my God, he's out of energy. He's lost his battery.
I was wondering, I am facing technical issues, but now it's Bill. Okay.
Oh my God, no. So, since Bill is frozen, Ravid, I'm going to ask you, where can people go to pick up Bill's book?
So it's on Amazon. It's on PackPub, the same website which you've shown. I can actually show Bill's. I can share my screen here. It's easier for folks to actually look at it.
We've made it almost a full hour without Bill freezing. That was He froze in a good position though. Sometimes, people freeze in an awkward way. Oh, now he's left. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I've shared my screen.
Oh, okay, got it. There you go.
Yeah. So here it is available.
Okay.
And yeah, you can just hop onto Amazon and buy your copy now and enjoy your Christmas. We have good endorsements here, and definitely books. Bill's book is something I've had obviously the first eyes to it, and I loved it. What do you think about it, Kate? How do you like it?
I've been reading it, and actually when Bill was talking, he mentioned, economies of learning versus economies of scale. I'm like, wait, I just read that somewhere. And then I remembered it was in his book, because I was reading it last night and this morning.
Yeah.
And yeah, I actually love it. I love that there's so many animations, because typically data books, you get them, they're thick and they're kind of dull and boring. This one, it feels like you're just talking to Bill. And as people heard today,
yes, exactly.
It's a lot of fun talking to Bill. So remove the screen sharing. But Ravid, I don't know if we're going to get Bill back. I think we wrap up.
Yeah.
At least I have somebody to end it up with. Look at this.
But great session. Thank you for this, Kate. And thank you, Bill, if you will be listening to this later. Oh, Bill is back.
Bye, Bill.
Bye, Bill.
I just wanted to make a grand exit. Sorry, everybody.
Actually, I was just saying you froze in a really good way that we couldn't even tell if Bill, the last question I always ask is, if people wanted to continue the conversation, which seems like a lot of people do, where can they go to find you? Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere else?
I'm like Chicken Man. I'm everywhere. So LinkedIn is probably the best place. I actually check messages on LinkedIn. Don't reach out to me on Facebook. I'm not a Facebook fan, though I do post stuff there. But LinkedIn is probably the best place. Also Twitter as well. You can find me. Shmarzo. There's not very many Shmarzos out there, and if you find a Shmarzo, it's one of my clan, so that's safe.
Okay, awesome. Well, Bill, thank you so much for your time today. We had a great session. So many great people joined, and thank you again for teaching me a lot. I love when I get to take so many notes on a live session.
Remember, there is homework assignment, Kate. So I will be grading.
Yes. I already got the F for fantastic. It's fine.
F for fantastic. Yes. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Kate.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody. It was a great session. I had a good time.
All right. Bye, guys.